7:30. Chicago's Morning Answer continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Don Jr. at the convention was confronted by Klingon Collins of CNN, asked about Saturday. I thought it was interesting to get son's perspective after that traumatic experience of having his father almost assassinated on Saturday at that rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. Here's what Don Jr. had to say.
Thank you. I'm here with Donald Trump Jr. Obviously, he was just talking about how his dad picked his selection for Vice President, Senator J.D. Vance. But how's your dad doing overall since Saturday night?
He's doing well. I mean, it obviously was a pretty somber moment. I was with my kids on a Saturday evening, and I get this news that he's been shot, but I couldn't get a hold of anyone. He was in lockdown at the hospital. It took about 90 minutes, so that was a long time.
90 minutes where you could talk to him?
Before I could speak to him and really know what was going on. And when I did, he was, some shock, but a lot of resolve. He was joking about it and talking about it in a way that only my father could do. But it was just that moment when he stood up after being shot at and just showed resolve to keep fighting for this country. That was everything for me. I just literally told him, I go, "You're the biggest badass I know." And so we had some jokes about that. That was the first thing I thought to think of even in that moment, because it was that powerful. And that's the kind of resolve. That's why we had peace deals under Trump. That's why we had a great economy. You need that. We're watching right now the weakness that's led our country into all of these disasters, into these wars. And it's because that's the nature of predation. When a predator sees weakness that we're exuding on the world stage, they pounce. And I think it's going to be important to get that back, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
I didn't know he had to wait 90 minutes. That's a long time, because those two, their line of communication is always open.
Yeah, in fact, I think Don Jr. had a lot of influence on picking on the selection of Vance as his father's running mate, in fact. But getting to the FBI's investigation into the attempted assassination of the president on Saturday. So what do we know about the shooter so far? I mean, at least in terms of what's been reported, what we know versus what the FBI knows, probably two very different things. The FBI says he acted alone. They say he had very limited social media use. They say he was not known to the agency, so he had not, gotten onto the FBI or law enforcement's radar locally or federally. We know about he donated through Act Blue, registered Republican, all that kind of business.
I think he did that to throw people off. That's conjecture on my part.
Yeah, perhaps. Law enforcement officials say there was a good amount of planning that took place. The CBS reporting we were just talking about with the retired Secret Service agent Mike Olson suggests some of that, and suggests some of the planning was sort of being done in real time under the watchful eye of Secret Service and local law enforcement. It's rather bizarre. He was not carrying an ID. Explosive materials found in his vehicle in his home. We need more color on that.
They were able to unlock his phone in Quantico yesterday, but are still going through and still say they do not have a motive yet.
Graduated from the Community College of Allegheny County with an associate degree in engineering science. He worked as a dietary aide at a nursing center. The nursing center said his background check was clean. Classmates said he was a loner in high school who had been bullied. That's about what we know. Part of the question is, what will we ever really know, and what sort of alacrity will the FBI have in providing details that we could get relatively fast? And we were just talking about that again with Mike Olson. Some of those details, in terms of assessing the performance of Secret Service and law enforcement, how this happened, the communications between law enforcement on that day. We have CBS News reporting about this half hour, and people have eyes on him, and there are radio transmissions. I want to see some sort of sensibly redacted transcript of that. That should be made part of the public domain. But I don't know.
I want to hear from that officer that was on the roof and didn't engage him, and then went and retreated.
Well,
Why?
I don't. We don't need to hear from anybody in particular. We have transcripts.
Okay.
All those transmissions are recorded, and they should be disclosed in substantive part. At least that's my view. For more on the investigation into what everybody acknowledges as a failure, but just acknowledging the obvious is not good enough. James Gagliano joins us. He's a retired FBI supervisory special agent and a doctoral candidate in Homeland Security at St. John's. Don't call them the Red Storm. He also serves as mayor of the village of Cornwall-on-Hudson, New York, and he is on the board of directors of the Law Enforcement Legal Defense Fund. James Gagliano, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Dan and Amy, it's been a long time. How are you guys doing?
Very good. Thanks for joining us again. And so, give us your perspective. I don't want to lead you anywhere. Just your perspective on the sort of investigation the FBI you expect will do and maybe perhaps should do if there's any daylight between those two.
Sure, absolutely, and I think Dan, you laid it out there, with crystalline focus in regards to where we are right now with public information regarding the investigation. And I was appreciative of the president getting out in the Oval Office and giving an address and advising everyone to take the temperature down. And we always caution, let's wait till the facts come in, but you know what happens. The internet's loose, and the folks that have all the answers jump out ahead, and the speculation runs rampant. Look, I was on the ground. I was working for CNN at the time, recently retired from the FBI in 2017 when Stephen Paddock murdered 58 people at a country concert in Las Vegas. We still don't have a motive there. Mm-hmm. And I think that people that are expecting or anticipating you're going to get a motive, through an investigation, sometimes it's difficult. And sometimes bad people do bad and evil things, and it defies credulity. You can't figure out that answer. The FBI is going to work on that. You mentioned the phone. They had been able to access to basically get past the encryption and get into the phone. I believe, and I'm hearing this through channels, that they're working on a laptop as well. You pointed out that the shooter, a 20-year-old kid, a loner, an outsider, apparently, has some conflicting, confusing backgrounds. But look, that doesn't change the fact that he tried to assassinate a former president. That has not happened in 43 years. But in our country's history, 4 presidents have been assassinated. There has been a bunch of political violence across the last 10 years from the extremists on both sides of things. This, and especially with the RNC entering day 2 in Milwaukee, this is a troubling construct. And yes, you rightly point out there's going to be a lot of questions about the Secret Service, their relations with local law enforcement, why the perimeter could have been breached that easily, and the communications failures, which I got to tell you guys, 25 years in the FBI, served in many tactical response positions with the hostage rescue team, and as the senior team leader of the New York City FBI office SWAT team. Every after-action review I ever sat on, we talked at the end and said, why couldn't we speak to each other? And I'm sure that's going to be a central focus in this investigation.
Since the rifle belonged to his father, do you think his father is going to face any charges?
I don't. So long as this was a legally purchased weapon, and this is Pennsylvania, where it is a big hunting culture, and believe it or not, and I know the AR-15 is demonized often, but it is a popular hunting weapon. The son was, apparently had used it before for target practice. So long as the father did not know and was not complicit, or there were not signs that his son was so troubled or had made threats against, assassination, to kill a president or something like that, I do not believe that the family, the father, could be charged for this.
So this generally acknowledged failure that is lacking in sort of specific details, some of which surrounds technology. I mean, you mentioned 4 presidents have been assassinated, but even in this hypercharged political environment, with technology today and the sophistication of law enforcement, and frankly the analog effort that was made to assassinate President Trump, talk about straining the bounds of credulity. Were there drones used? They have the They have access to that technology. They should have. I mean, it's almost redundant at this point, because if the reporting is right, they all had eyes on this guy for 30 minutes, and then sort of nobody did anything. It was like what assassin menagerie. They're just watching him operate around. Why doesn't somebody take him into custody? Why doesn't somebody confront him? None of that happened. In addition to that, of course, allowing him to get to that elevated position. I mean, like, not. The motive is one thing, and of course we'd like to know a motive, but I understand it's possible that we never will get a satisfactory answer on that. But there has to be a satisfactory answer on how that all went down, that half hour from first sight to him on a roof opening fire.
And I'm going to push back on you and say you're not going to get one, and here's why. The Secret Service has an abundance of resources. Now, having said that, they answer underneath the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. And when something like the Republican National Convention this week, or when the Democrats hold their National Convention, something like that happens, it's designated an NSSE, which is a National Special Security Event. Resources aren't an issue there. When you're protecting a former president, and I could argue that, look, this guy is wildly popular with his supporters and loathed by his detractors. He's a polarizing figure. Should there have been upgraded security? Absolutely. But when you're traveling on the campaign trail, you do not have months and months and months to plan for something and prepare for something. You have limited resources, and you are relying on police departments, state and local police departments, some of which are better than other, and I'm not casting aspersions here, but it makes it difficult. I'm going to leave you with this, and this is a news-making thing. But I learned a long time ago. I served on protection details for 3 attorneys general. I served on protection details for 2 FBI directors. One of the things I learned as a young FBI agent back in the early 90s was this. A senior grizzled veteran told me, Jimmy, complacency kills. You always have to treat every surveillance opportunity, every time you're protecting a dignitary or a protectee, you have to believe that something bad could happen on your watch, and you can't ever allow complacency to set in. He also told me this. If you are willing to die in the process, listen to what I'm saying. If a bad guy, a terrorist, a criminal, a depraved individual is willing to die in the process, when we live in a free and open society like our democracy demands here in the United States, there is no person that you can 100% guarantee can be protected 100% of the time. And I think with what the Secret Service was dealing with, these whistle-stop tours, hey, tomorrow we're headed here, 2 days later we're going there, and you're making all these coordinations. It's difficult. I'm not making excuses for them. I'm not shilling for them. Clearly there was a failure here. 130 yards away, and a kid gets up on a rooftop with an AR-15. But I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt until the investigation concludes.
But that half hour, the decision making in real time, even if there was a gap, even if some local law enforcement officer missed the call to secure that building, the eyes that were on him. I mean, this is the rally goers that were saying "guy on roof," calling attention to the rally goers were part of the security detail that day, and I just like the judgment calls. There has to be some accountability for those judgment calls that were made during that 30-minute period where he was first sighted, if it wasn't before, by some of the rally goers. Don't you think?
I do, but let me also explain. You were mentioning something about transcripts. And look, I've been out of the FBI for 8 years. I know technology, emergent technologies evolve, and I know that they get better at things. And obviously, from lessons learned and best practices, they do things differently. But when I was a SWAT team leader and I was working for security at the Republican National Convention in 2004, which was held at Madison Square Garden in the heart of New York City. Mm-hmm. This was 3 years after 9/11, so same type of heightened threat posture and concerns. You're talking about 100+ agencies that are working together. There's a command post or a joint operations center or a fusion cell, whatever you want to call it, that is fielding all this different radio traffic. Well, Jimmy, why couldn't they talk to each other? Well, the counter snipers for the Secret Service are on one frequency. The FBI counter assault team is on another frequency. Command and control and headquarters is on another frequency. The NYPD has 10 or 20 different surveillance operations groups, counter assault teams, beat cops on different frequencies. It's impossible to put everybody on one freak. Everything has to go through a fusion center, and information and intelligence has to be vetted in real time. Now, and again, I'm not making excuses for the fact that this appears, and folks, I'll say this, a colossal failure, a lapse of security, a breach that's inexcusable. And I agree, heads may roll. Should the head of the Secret Service take the blame for this? Yes, she should. Should the site advance folks? Should the people in charge of yes, I understand that. But I want to understand why that 30 minutes happened, why the local police officers that saw this, were alerted to this, were not able to get the information to where it needed to go, and it took so long for that to happen. Unconscionable.
Yeah, no, we want those answers too. James Gagliano, retired FBI supervisory special agent, doctoral candidate in Homeland Security at St. John's. He also serves as the mayor of the village of Cornwall-on-Hudson in New York, and he's on the board of directors of the Law Enforcement Legal Defense Fund as well. James Gagliano, thanks again for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan and Amy. Take care, guys.
You too, and he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
You're listening to Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.